That's wonderful. So we'll get underway. I'm going to jump to the agenda here. And so I will give, as usual, a very brief overview on the movement. And then I'm going to hand it over to my esteemed colleague, Melinda, for a whole segment on accountability, which we focused on also 2 months ago. And it's obviously something that many of us care a lot about. Then we'll hear from our regions and how they're doing. We'll hear an update on the growth of the Humanitarian Development Nexus Working Group from my colleague, Sai. We'll have a short announcement about our event during the UN General Assembly, which will be on September 16th. And then just please mark your calendars. You'll be getting a link soon for our next global meeting on September 30th. So, as you know, this movement was launched the same day as the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. Many of us have participated in advocating for what should be in those goals under the banner of the world we want. The pandemic has really taught us that this is the world that we need. We need a world with responsive, strong, committed local governments that we as citizens in civil society can constructively engage with and solve local problems locally. This was born with the respect and the appreciation and the solidarity that people who are on the front lines of solving their own problems are often systematically denied any meaningful voice in the decisions that affect their lives. From our perspective, the work of community-led development touches all the key sectors, and we launched this movement and we have 5 key goals. One is ensuring voice and agency for women, youth, and marginalized groups, that communities have a fair share of public resources. At least 20% of public resources should be in the hands of local communities, and that is far from the case currently. We want good local governance, and by that we mean mandatory mechanisms of social accountability and transparency and citizen engagement with the process of local government. Those 3 bullets should come together to produce people's fundamental right to quality public services, and also lays the groundwork for communities to become resilient, because communities are the nexus, are the place where resilience happens. We have global members. Some of you heard about the conversation with Oxfam Nigeria and the Oxfam chapter. One of the key roles of our global chapters is to support, empower, help resource the country chapters. We have working groups and we have country groups, and we have a set of email lists, and we can kind of track our growth by looking at those. During the past month, the Liberia email group has doubled. The Rwanda group has doubled. We also launched last month our broadly targeted to policymakers everywhere Shift the Power newsletter, which currently has 5,356 recipients. We'd like to see that number grow. People can subscribe on our mstld.org website. We also saw, and we'll be hearing later, about the Humanitarian Development Group, which grew by 50% in the last month. We have a theory of change along 2 thrusts. One of really mobilizing our groups to work together for collective impact on creating healthy, productive, resilient, self-reliant communities, and also advocacy partnerships to really push for policies that support community-led development, because if those 2 things can converge, the Sustainable Development Goals can be achieved. So with that, I want to introduce my colleague, Melinda, who is going to introduce our guest speakers. So I'm going to stop sharing my slides and hand it over to Melinda.
John, sorry, just before you do that, I think you will have to make Alex co-host. I misspoke.
Oh,
we can't do that. So.
Okay, great. I will do that. I sure wish it alphabetized people in Zoom, but.
Yeah, and Melinda, I'm going to launch the post for you.
Oops. Co-host, great. Okay, Alex, you are now a co-host, and Melinda, you can unmute and introduce this section.
Okay, great. Thank you, John. That was a really great overview, as always. So as John mentioned, this month's call is going to be focused on the theme of accountability, building on the session that we had just a couple of months ago. By the end of the call, we hope to generate a better understanding of how communities can use accountability as a tool to have a voice in major development projects affecting their human rights. So we'll hear from Alex Sampaio from International Accountability Project and from Birgit Kuba from the World Bank Inspection Panel. So the poll that's being launched right now, everyone's invited to participate because we'd like to measure our existing experiences and understand how we already understand the term accountability, because it's kind of a specific topic. So while responses continue to come in, I'll introduce Alex from IAP, and Alex is going to share his slides with us. So International Accountability Project works for a world in which all people can shape the decisions that affect their homes, environment, and communities. IAP has developed an early warning system as an initiative to ensure local communities and the organizations that support them have verified information about projects being proposed at major development finance institutions and have clear strategies for advocacy. Alex is based in Brazil, and he's a policy and programs coordinator. So Alex, if you want to start us off, at the end of the presentation, we'll have a quick Q&A just for this one, and then we'll move to introduce Birgit and have our second presentation.
Thank you very much, Melinda. I'm trying to share my video as well so people can see me. Can you see me?
Yes.
Good to see you, Alex.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Melinda. Thank you, John, for all the conversations that we already have and for making it possible for us to speak in this amazing network that you have. And also, again, thanking Margot and Accountability Council for making the introduction. Just wanted to recognize that. So I'm going to share my screen. I had shared my PowerPoint presentation. So am I going to share it from my screen? Is that it?
Yeah.
It's all right if that's it. Okay.
You have the power to do that, we think.
Okay. So let me know if you can see my PowerPoint right now.
We can.
Yes.
Great. It doesn't allow me to make it a presentation. Oh, okay. Now I think you can see it. So as Melinda just shared, International Accountability Project is a global organization that works with human rights. We're an NGO. We work with human rights and environmental rights. And we have created, and we are co-administrators of the early warning system, which also works worldwide. And we have regional co-administrators in all continents. So just a little bit about the system, so you can understand a little bit better what we do and what can be accomplished by it. We work right now monitoring 15 IFIs, international financial institutions. So just to make it clear that this is by far not all the international financial institutions that are out there. we did start by the ones that we consider the main ones. So, you know, we have the World Bank, we have the IFC, which is a private arm of the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, Asian Development Bank, European Development Bank, the New Development Bank. We have the Green Climate Fund, and other institutions as well. So as I just said, 15, but we keep on growing. By the end of the year, we expect to have 18 institutions being tracked, and this is not going to be the end of it. We're going to keep growing, and we also are going to keep growing our network, and I'm going to explain a little bit better what this work is. I'm going to go a little fast. Usually I do this presentation in 1 hour. We have 10 minutes here, so I'm going to be a little bit faster today. Why we monitor those institutions? We monitor them because they have a clear direct and sometimes also indirect impact on environmental and human rights of local communities, of society in general. I'm going to be speaking a little bit more about the types of projects that we track, but they do have a clear impact on our daily lives of the communities that we work with. And much of the time, this is not clearly understood, sorry. And many of the communities, the organizations that we work with, prior to working with us, they didn't really know how to search for the information, what this information was really about, because it's also very technical. They didn't see many paths that they could act with this information in hand. So that is why we're here. That is why the early warning system exists. And hopefully I can explain to you as well that is not about also just tracking projects and making information available, but it goes well beyond that, working with communities and civil society organizations that assist them in making sure that their voices are heard in different forums that exist and that they might not be aware of. These institutions, just a quick overview. These institutions, they have boards of directors, and we try to make sure to map them out as well, so we can have a conversation with them when the communities want, or also when we think that practices, policies need to be changed in order for communities to have more transparency or to have the possibility of better participation. These institutions qualify their projects, their investments by risk category. So they have category, I'm speaking in general, but they could have different types of qualification. But in general, there's high risk category, there's medium risk category, low risk category, usually qualified as category A for high risk, B for medium risk, and C for low risk. This is their qualification. This is not a categorization by the early warning system. And they also have financial intermediaries usually as a categorization, which means that they send investments amounts through a financial intermediary. It might be a national development bank or a private bank, for instance, that is going to then invest in sub projects, right? This is how it's called. And these projects, these investments, they're qualified by sectors as well. So again, these institutions have different qualifications of sectors. In the early warning system, we try to maintain a pattern. So it's possible to make comparisons, but those sectors vary from hydro project powers to oil and gas, energy in general, that might include photovoltaic or wind projects, education, health, investments in industry, and so on. They also usually have safeguards, which, if we want to make a comparison, it would be some sort of corporate social responsibility for those institutions, the guidelines that they have to follow in order to approve these projects and also to and investments, and also while those investments are being made, they need to follow those standards. And this is quite important for us because those are safeguards that we usually look at in order to make a complaint if the communities want to make a complaint. And they have internal complaint mechanisms, which I don't really need to explain now because we're going to have a presentation about this. But just so you know, usually they have internal complaint mechanisms. It's not all the institutions that have them. The New Development Bank, for instance, doesn't have them. Doesn't have a complaint mechanism. BNDES, which is a huge investment, investment financial institution, also doesn't have it. But usually they do have it, and it can be used depending on the goals of the communities, civil society assisting them as well. So the early warning system, as I said, is monitoring this investments and projects. And what we're doing is we're trying to let communities and civil society know about these projects before
Did the audio just cut out for others?
No, it just cut out for Alex. Alex, can you unmute yourself? Sorry. I was clicking the button to admit somebody into the call, and it jumped up and clicked your...
Okay, sorry.
Sorry about
Can you
that.
please let me know where I stopped?
Oh, it was just the last 10 seconds.
All right. So I was just saying that, you know, explain how we monitor the institutions, and, you know, what we're trying to do is sending information about the investments to CSOs, to communities, local communities, about those investments that are coming up they're on the pipeline, as we say, before the board of these institutions approve those projects. And the reason why we do that is because we want to make sure that they are receiving information in a timely manner, so they can express themselves in relation to those investments in the way that they want, but with sufficient time that the board of these institutions know of their opinions, and, you know, might want to change the project, might want to cancel the project, or, you know, if it's the opinion of the communities as well, go ahead with the project. So the way we do that is we have a global network of organizations, and we also and communities, and we keep on growing this network. Right now it's around 500 and something organizations throughout the world, and we send them the information via the best way that they think it's useful for them. So it might be via email, you know, or social media. There are other ways that we're exploring to send out this information as well, because it doesn't reach everyone because of the problems of connectivity of the internet, of course. So we're exploring community radio, things like that. And it would be great as well to, in the future, hear your opinions about how information can reach the communities you work with in a way that is more accessible. And what we try to do, and as I said, I wanted to explain that this is not just sending information out, but also working with the methodology that best serves the community, right? So we do work with community-led research, with community-led development, which is one of the reasons why we got to know about this network. You know, doing research about this, we came across it, and we invited you as a network to participate in a stream of work that we're currently engaged with, which is to develop a community-led development methodology that responds to community needs, you know, and that could be used by our network. So just quick explanation of how we got into that. But the community work methodology basically involves first sending the information to the communities and the CSOs that are assisting them, and then hearing them, you know, what they need. If it's for us to go to the communities and explain about those investments, what the safeguards are, the specific investment that they're dealing with, and possible paths that we've seen other communities taking, this is what we're going to do. If they want us to assist them in doing research as well, if they need more information about the private actors that are involved, anything that the community wants in relation to the response that they want to give to this investments is what we're going to be engaged with, us and our networks, right? IEP is not a very big organization. I'd say it's a small organization, honestly. It's around 13 people right now. So we do rely a lot on our global network to assist us in responding as well to communities and assisting these communities in the methodology that they want to apply. Here I have a quick example of where we start, and this is a list of projects that we've tracked. Here you can see I typed the keyword for Panama and energy, and then I can look at the energy projects that are coming up for Panama in our list. And this list, just to clarify as well, it has been worked on by our staff. So we do go into each and every project. Right now we have more than 20,000 projects. It says 15 there, but it's out of date. And we go into each and every project to analyze the information and to make it more accessible, the more accessible as possible for people to read it. Sometimes there's a lot of technical language. We try to translate it. Sometimes it's not in the native language of the country. We do try to make sense of this information, and there's also a system that you can translate to each and every language of the country within our system. One of the added values of having of receiving this information from us is that, from our perspective and from talking to communities and CSOs that work with those communities, it's sort of unrealistic to think that they are going to be going to each and every institution, financial institution webpage and looking for projects, right? Each and every day, going through those very complicated, very technical systems. And then, it varies, of course, from one institution to another. But as I said, there are a lot of institutions out there, and unrealistic to think that they're going to go to those web pages, be it every week or every day or every month to see if there is a project that's going to affect their lives, if it's going to affect their ecosystems or, their social environmental rights. So we do try to make it, accessible to them by sending the information from all the institutions we're tracking, which right now, admittedly, is only 15, but keeps on growing, and it's a better perspective than thinking that these institutions or communities are going to go and track these 15 organizations every week and every day. Just very quickly, I'm ending. This is a snapshot of one of the projects. When you access it, you can see the project description. You can see which country, location, financial institution is involved with this project, the status, if it's active or not, the risk rating, as I mentioned before, when it's going to be the board date of decision, the borrower, the sector, and also you can see it up on the right-hand corner. There is a place where you can select the language, and going a little bit down, you can see the private institutions and also content for the company and the internal mechanism, if you want to access the internal mechanism. So this is briefly it. There's bank documents as well, campaign documents that we track from other organizations that have worked with either this project or the private institutions that are involved with the project. All of that is sent with the snapshots of the project, each and every project. This is it. I think I'm over my time. I'm sorry for that. I but yeah, happy to respond to any questions and to keep on going if you want me to as well.
Thank you, Alex. Actually, you're right on time. And we're gonna have a couple of minutes here for a few questions and things. I'm gonna share the poll results first of all, and then I have a question for you, and then we can get people going. So what we clearly saw with the poll results was that there are people that the majority of people who are on the call today have used accountability and or transparency tools in their work. And that most of us understand accountability as meaning, something to do with government or something to do with social accountability. And a lot of what we're talking about today, is exactly as you've described, trying to monitor, massive human rights projects, or massive projects that affect human rights. And a lot of that boils down to coming into something that looks a lot more corporate or a lot more sort of public action, than government even, or than the kind of advocacy that we're used to seeing. So I guess my question to you is, when we talk about accountability in this work, like, can you give, just a brief line about how you see accountability as a tool? Like, what does it mean to try to use that to empower a community to protect their human rights or to kind of go after people who are hurting their human rights?
Sure, yeah, that's not an easy answer to give, but I'm gonna try. Thank you for the question. It's very useful. It does look like a very hermetic, very different type of advocacy type of work, because most of the organizations are not used to working with international financial institutions, national ones, bilateral ones. But the language, as soon as you realize, that they have a certain language, you get accustomed to the pattern. They are institutions that are composed by states, right? So the type of advocacy that we do, in looking at this multilateral institutions, is an advocacy that has a lot of relation with what we do towards states. So we do use human rights treaties, language, standards, international standards. It's just the venue that changes, and also we use safeguards as well, but we try to interpret those safeguards in light of those international instruments and standards. As I said in the beginning, we are a human rights and environmental rights organization. This is where we're coming from. This is the language that we use and believe in. So it's not because an international financial institution has different language or safeguards that we're not going to interpret them or push them for an interpretation that is in line with what we believe is right, which is international treaties and standards. So we use accountability in that way. If you're using the internal mechanisms, for instance, we are using them and using the language towards them that we would use with a UN committee or in the Inter-American Human Rights System. We would use the same language. We would just adapt the way of communication to the actor that we're trying to converse with or influence. It's different when you are looking at the private actors that are involved in those projects and you want to converse with them, right? Then you, I think, need to adapt the way that you're going to look at this actor. It's not going to be the same as when you're looking at a public institution. Of course, they're not many times bound by the same rules, by the same treaties. A lot of national law comes into play then, and I think also expectations need to be much more nuanced when it comes to those types of conversation. Also, from the point of view of, oh, sorry, was there a question?
No. We were just unmuted for a minute.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, no, I think the types of expectations also need to change when it comes to conversing with private actors. But again, you know, IEP, as I said, is an organization that is going to follow the community's goals, the community's wills of, you know, resistance or conversations that they want to have. So if they do want to engage with a private actor, we are also going to try to see the best way to do that, to converse and see the results that are going to follow from that. But yeah, it would be very different than what we're used to doing.
Thank you. We've got time for one more question before we turn it over to Birgit. This one comes from Diana, who's our THP rep in Mexico. And this is a question about how to make communities, you know, active agents in the process. So her question is, do you use these tools or mechanisms for building capacity and skills in the community, or what is the relationship with communities? So you've got, you know, like 2 minutes to tackle that.
Okay. Definitely, we use these tools to try and create capacity. So for us as well, it's the creation of capacity of our team. So we call it more a co-information session or whatever we want to call it. But we respond to communities' demands. If they want us to go to the communities, we do go there and try to have those conversations, exchange of information, so they understand you know, the influx of money, where the investment is coming from, who are those institutions, the safeguards. And this needs to be emphasized, we don't do that by ourselves, right? We are going to go if we need to go, if we're asked to go, but we go in partnership with local organizations, people that are already working and have the trust of those communities. You know, it's an important part of the process, right? That the trust building needs to be there, that this trust relationship needs to be there for us to be able to do the work. And also there's the factor of, you know, the notion of the national reality, the political reality, the possible consequences of doing this type of work, the possible reactions that might be detrimental to the community. You know, there are a lot of places, as we know, that safety is a concern. So we do need those local regional partners to assist us in doing this exchange of information sessions. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Great, perfect. It sounds like there are a lot of people on this call today that could relate to that second part, the need to have lots more local partners that can, you know, have access to more and more communities who are facing these kinds of problems and who want to be change agents. So thank you very much, Alex. If there are other questions for Alex, please continue to put them in the chat and we can send them by email afterwards and circulate responses. We want this to be as interactive as possible. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to Birgit, who is online.
Hi, Melinda.
Hi, nice to meet you. Nice to have you here today. We were so glad to be able to host someone from World Bank Inspection Panel. So as Birgit kind of gets set up and she's going to share her slides with us, just a brief introduction to the inspection panel. The inspection panel is an independent complaints mechanism for people in communities who believe that they have been or likely to be adversely affected by a World Bank funded project. And the process by which a community submits a complaint and the inspection panel investigates, it aims to promote accountability at the World Bank, give affected people a greater voice in the activities that are supported by the World Bank, especially ones that affect their rights and their interests, and foster redress when it's warranted. So Birgit is an inspections panel operations officer, and she's going to talk a little bit today about how the panel functions and how communities engage with the panel and what the likely results or possible outcomes of that is. So Birgit, take it away.
All right, I'll quickly share my screen so you can see my slides. Thank you for the introduction, Melinda and John. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So same as Alex, my presentation, usually I have more time to deliver it. So I decided to still keep it as it is. And I can share it, or people already have it, but I can definitely send it after this presentation for people who want more details than what I'm able to cover here. I'll just try to give you an overview. So the inspection panel was created in 1993, and it was the first independent accountability mechanism at an international financial institution. Since then, many others were created, and now there's about 20 members of the so-called Independent Accountability Mechanisms Network. And most of these international accountability mechanisms have different functions. They do dispute resolution, investigations, and I'll introduce you a little bit to how that works. The idea of the inspection panel is that we respond to complaints from communities or local civil society groups about social and environmental issues of World Bank finance projects. This slide gives an overview of how our office is structured and how it works, but the main important takeaway here is that we are independent from the operations at the World Bank, and we report directly to the board of the World Bank. Who can file a complaint with us? So it needs to be a local community. We need at least 2 individuals that are ready to sign a complaint. We offer to keep people's names and identities confidential, but we need at least 2 people to send a complaint, either on behalf of them or a larger community. And a complaint can also be submitted by a local NGO on behalf of a community. And in rare circumstances, an executive director of the World Bank can also trigger an investigation of the inspection panel. This next slide here is specifically about CSOs and when they can represent requesters. And the main takeaway here is that we need a national or local NGO to present complaints. There's only rare circumstances where it's acceptable that an international NGO files a complaint, and this is only in cases where there's no local representation available because there's no civil society space in that specific country or similar circumstances. This slide is basically just an explanation of where you can find information about a project, but IAP already talked about their great tool. And basically when you go to for the World Bank, when you go onto their website, you can see what they do in different countries, and then you can find project information, but I'm not gonna show you that in detail now. What I also wanted to mention is that a lot of World Bank finance projects have project level grievance redress mechanisms. That's one avenue to go. But if you have, as a community, tried that avenue and you're not happy with what came out, there is always the inspection panel at the World Bank to go next. What is important to know about the inspection panel process is that we can only accept the complaint when the complainants have tried first to resolve their issues directly with the project team, anyone else in the World Bank. So we will ask if people have tried to go through the local or the project level grievance redress mechanism, or have talked to any people working on the project. And if they have tried that and didn't get a response, or didn't get a response they are happy with, then we can accept the complaint and process it further. On the bottom of this slide is just a link to the inspection panel website, where we have a complaints form. So it's a form that you can click on our website, and then it tells you the information that you need to enter to start a case with us. Here is an overview of the admissibility criteria for a case for us to be able to process it. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but the important things are, one, which I already mentioned, is that the complainants must have tried with somebody else, the project, directly to resolve the concern. So we're kind of a last or second resort in that sense. And we can only get complaints about projects that are currently active and less than 95% dispersed. So once a project has fully finished, implemented, and there's no more disbursement, the inspection panel does not have a mandate anymore to look into it. This is an overview of our process. So basically, when we receive a complaint, we either register it when it fulfills our criteria or we don't. And then when we register it, there is a two-phase kind of process. We have an eligibility phase where we take a first, more superficial look at whether there is a potential case for us and whether we need to do a full investigation, hire experts, and do a deep dive into the project. Once we determine that in the eligibility phase, we prepare a short report that does recommend an investigation, and then we move to the investigation phase. This slide gives the timelines for our process. So basically, after receiving a complaint, we usually register within 15 business days after receiving it, unless there is more information that we need when there's something missing in the complaint or we need to clarify something. Then the bank gets an opportunity to respond to the complaint within 21 days, so about 4 weeks. So they write a written response to the allegations in the complaint. And then if we decide on the basis of the complaint and the response that we do need to investigate, we recommend to the board to do an investigation, and we try to do our investigations within 6 months. And after we finish the investigation, number 4 here, the post-investigation stage, is when we submit our investigation report to the board, and then the bank project team, bank management has to prepare a response to our investigation report on how they plan to resolve the issues or provide redress to the community. And there's a consultation process involved at that stage where in the preparation of this action plan, the community needs to be consulted. This is a similar slide that lays out this process after we have finished our investigation, where this management action plan that includes remedial actions gets prepared. I'm not going to go in detail through that, but if people have more questions about it later, I'm happy to explain in more detail. One issue area I wanted to mention is that in recent years, we have seen more and more complainants that come to us being scared of retaliations or reprisals for filing a complaint with the inspection panel. A couple of years ago in 2016, we issued guidelines that aim to reduce the risk of retaliation and try to create a safe environment for people to engage with us. So these guidelines lay out that, you know, we can protect confidentiality of complainants, and then certain measures that we take when we go to a country and we visit, where we meet, how we communicate, and what type of measures we can take to try to protect people who are concerned about complaining about a project. And those guidelines are also available on our website if you're interested in looking at more detail. These graphs here provide a short overview of the number of complaints that we have received. So the inspection panel has received about 147 complaints since we were created in 1994. So not a lot, a few every year. And currently we have 4 ongoing cases that we are either in the eligibility or investigation phase. On the bottom left, you can see that the number of cases we have received has steadily increased over the years. And on the right side in the pie chart, you can see what are the regions in the world that most complaints come from. Just to give you an idea of what are the issue areas that we look into as the inspection panel. So we look into the project's risk assessment, if it has properly identified social and environmental risk, and whether the project is providing mitigation measures when there is an impact, a negative impact on a community or the environment, what can be done to mitigate those risks. We get quite a lot of complaints about Indigenous peoples issues, about whether Indigenous communities have been consulted adequately and whether documents are prepared in a way that are adequate for these communities. We have quite a lot of complaints about resettlement issues, about livelihood restoration of communities that have to move because of a project, and how baseline information was collected, things like that. And then consultation is often an issue that is being brought to us. How do we define whether we have a positive outcome of our process? So it's kind of twofold. On the one hand, we really try, when the World Bank, through non-compliance with its own policies, has caused harm to communities or the environment, that there will be, after our process, a redress of harm, that there are some actions proposed by the bank to remediate the issues and provide some kind of remedy. And then the second issue, or the second positive outcome our cases can have, is that there are broader implications at the bank. For example, policy clarifications, better guidance for staff at the World Bank, so the same issues don't happen again in the future, strengthening of capacity. And we as the inspection panel are also producing knowledge products. We have our so-called emerging lessons series, where we try to, in a more systematic way, look at cases over the years to identify what are issues that keep coming up repeatedly and what seem to be the issues that go wrong. So we have done work like that, and these advisory publications are also available on our website. I'll give you very briefly one case example of a case that we had in Uganda a few years ago, where the World Bank was financing the upgrading of a rural road. And what happened in this case is we got a complaint from a local NGO about issues relating to male workers being brought into a very rural area in Uganda, and there being a lot of sexual abuse of the local community, resulting in teenage pregnancies, harassment, increase of sex work, spread of sexually transmitted diseases. There were also resettlement issues, occupational health and safety issues, and also allegations of child labor. So there was a whole long list of terrible allegations against the bank in this project. When we got the complaint and started processing it, the bank at some point canceled the project, but they did stay involved to try to find remedy for communities. And our investigation did find in this case that there was an inadequate assessment by the World Bank of this labor influx risk, and that indeed harm was caused to women and children, that there was sexual abuse resulting in pregnancies, and that there were inadequate health and safety measures for the local community. And this case was kind of one of our major landmark cases in the last few years, because what we got in this case, and this is not always the case, sometimes we get a strong response to our investigation, sometimes we don't, but in this case, the institution took our investigation quite seriously, and they were major institutional changes. A global gender-based violence task force was established at the World Bank, which looked at all the different policies and procedures and how things are being done at the World Bank to try to assess where improvements can be made to avoid gender-based violence or mitigate it as much as possible in the future. And different guidance documents were adopted at the World Bank for labor influx and different things like that. So that was one of our major cases in the last few years that got a lot of attention, and where also some follow-up projects came out of it to help the local community, to provide training. And as a direct result of our case, affected women and children got medical, psychosocial, and legal help and vocational training. And then there was some follow-up in trying to design new projects to work against gender-based violence in that area. This is my last slide. I'm getting to the end of it. So this is, the inspection panel went through a review process in the last 3 years, because we were the first mechanism like that was created in the 1990s, and all the mechanisms like us that were created in the years after that have more functions than us. The inspection panel was limited to doing compliance reviews. So we get a complaint and we do an investigation to see whether the World Bank complied with its policies or procedures or didn't. But we do not have a mandate to try to do some type of dispute resolution or mediation with the communities. And we also lag behind on other issues that newer accountability mechanisms have resolved or have additional tools to do. So there was a 3-year process, and it's coming to an end now, where the World Bank's board approved certain measures to give additional tools to the inspection panel. One was that we got an official or formal advisory role. So these publications that we have been doing, we can do more of it now and do a more systematic look at what our investigations find. We are also going to get a dispute resolution service at the bank. and then time limits on how long communities have to be able to submit a complaint were extended and things like that. The details are being worked out right now, but these changes were approved earlier this year, but then will take full effect later this year. So the inspection panel is getting a little bit revamped and we'll be able to do more. This is the end of my presentation. Sorry for running through it so quickly. I hope it still gave you a general sense of what we do, and I'm happy to answer any more detailed questions.
Thank you, Birgit. Wow. I feel like there was so much information in that, and you managed to really break it down for us. I have a quick question just to get us started about the processes you describe about redress and how that works. Because I think this is one of the ways where the inspection panel really has the ability to empower communities and work with communities as change agents themselves. And that's through, you know, what kind of process is there for identifying what form the redress should take so that it benefits the communities to the maximum extent possible?
So we as the inspection panel were not directly involved in the redress part. We do the investigation to try to identify, did things go wrong in the project, what went wrong, and which policies were not followed, and what type of harm was caused. So we write a pretty detailed investigation report that really lays out the types of harm that we observed and what kind of policy non-compliances were there. And then but we do this fact-finding and compliance analysis and then submit our investigation report. But what happens after that is that the project team needs to prepare a response and come up with certain actions on how to try to provide redress. And in this process, we share our investigation report with the affected community or local CSOs to inform them what came out of our investigation. And the project team has to consult with the community on the actions of redress they are proposing. So this is where the community can then, knowing what our investigation found, can negotiate with the World Bank to try to see what kind of redress they think makes sense for them. And it's a fairly complex process because the World Bank, in preparing their action plan and their redress action, also needs to talk with the government and come to an agreement. But the fact that there is a required community consultation gives the community an opportunity to influence that process and to present what they would like to see as redress. But we as the inspection panel at that stage are kind of out of the process already. We will share our investigation and what it found, what were the non-compliances and where the bank needs to provide a response, but then how the response looks like or what the response is then happens in a later process that we are no longer part of.
Thank you. So we're getting some questions in the chat. I can see one from Dr. Rebecca, who's the MCLD country director in Nigeria. And Dr. Rebecca is asking, how can CLD chapters, which are either regional or national at our levels, how can these chapters be connected with the World Bank to move forward on community-led development? Is there kind of, are there mechanisms for feedback or for communication at these levels, or is it purely through the request and inspection?
So there are different units at the bank doing different things. The inspection panel specifically is really only for community complaints about social and environmental issues where communities feel like a World Bank finance project has caused social and environmental harm to them. So in these circumstances, people can come to us. When local communities are concerned about procurement issues, fraud, corruption, there is a different unit that receives complaints like that. Then there are project-specific grievance mechanisms. In terms of more a general cooperation with the World Bank, there is a civil society group. I can try to find the link that works on community relations. I don't know, I can't think of a specific name now, but I can find who this unit is. But we specifically just respond to project-specific complaints.
Right. Thank you. If you can find the name of it, you could shoot me an email later and we can circulate it with our members because I'm sure they'd be interested.
Yeah, I'll do that.
We do have some
Actually,
members who are on from Uganda, and I think, oh, John, I'm sorry.
Yeah, regarding that question, Gunjan and I were on a call yesterday with the GPSA, which is part of the bank, Global Partnership for Social Accountability, and they are taking on the initiative to link our chapters up with the social development specialists in each World Bank office. So that'll be happening, and we'll be following it up rigorously to make sure it happens.
Great. We've got another question from some of our members from Uganda about, John, you're muted if you're still,
Yeah,
no? Good, okay. All right. About the specific case that that you mentioned. So the inspection panel publishes the reports of its inspections, correct? So is that report something that we could circulate and kind of study and learn from?
Yes, so actually I didn't mention that, but all the different reports we produce through our process become public and are available on our website, and I'm happy to share the link with you. So there will be our final investigation report and also the bank's response and the actions they did in response. And actually for the specific Uganda case, we also have a short video that we produced a few years after, where we talk to people at the bank and the local community and NGO again, and people reflect about the case and talk about it. So that is quite interesting. It's a fairly short video that's available on YouTube, and I can also send you the link. It provides kind of a nice short summary of the case. So I can send that, but all the reports are also available on our website.
Absolutely, that would be great. Okay, great. I would open up the mic to others if there are questions that people would like to just ask. No, going once?
Hello.
Hi, we can hear you.
Yes, I wanted to ask Budget about the experiences of investigating the energy sector type of projects. If they are funded by the World Bank, usually in our country, let me say for Uganda, these projects are designed and usually implemented by government and contractors. The communities only see a huge dam in their community and power lighting, but they usually don't have a lot of influence, and usually a lot of money is lost in the chain as the dam is constructed along the years. To what extent can we ensure that in future communities have a direct involvement in such huge energy sector projects, of which at times World Bank is behind the funding? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marion. So if an energy project and a dam is financed by the World Bank, we can get a complaint about it, or communities or civil society groups can also approach us for information when they are not sure yet if they want to file a complaint, if they just want to understand the project better or have trouble finding information about it. We can also help with that, and then communities can decide if they actually want to file a complaint or not. And we can get complaints from very, very early on, as soon as there is a concept for a project and it's early in preparation. Even if there's no construction happening yet, we can already get a complaint, and then we will look at the design of the project and potentially investigate before any construction has started yet. But in these cases, it's important for communities to find out that a project is even planned and what it is going to look like. And sometimes it can be difficult to find that kind of information and to be able to look at these documents and see these kind of plans. So I think that's when, like Alex's presentation showed us, it's very, very helpful to have help to access that type of information. So you can get involved in these projects early on, where communities can still influence more what will happen, or there is a greater chance of providing input early, and that would potentially lead to some changes. In Uganda specifically, I'm not sure if you asked about Uganda, Marion, but we had some investigations in Uganda relating to the Bujagali hydropower plant and the Isimba Power Dam. I can also share the links for those if you're interested to see what type of work we were doing on those.
Yes, can I chip in a little bit?
Yes, of course.
Okay, my name is Mate Jokas. I represent Wilmot Development Foundation Uganda as the team leader. In line with Marione's question, we hail all of us from the same country. I saw Conrad nodding his head. I think he has been in Uganda and has experienced some of the things that are happening here. My worry is, how are the respondents protected when it comes to responses? You know, some of the, for example, the low developed countries, or the countries that are developing slowly, we don't call them low developed, of course, though they are not yet developed, they are in the process of development. How are the respondents protected amidst these kinds of political insights, you know? Because most of the investigations that are carried out by different people, having worked with also, for example, IGAD, that is the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, where we are doing also early warning system on reporting different events that happen in the communities and how the government responds to them. Now, what are some of the mechanisms that are put in place to protect the respondents? Because of course you may investigate, but the sources, how are they protected? Are they really from the government, or they are from the local communities? The community may have a different picture of the project, which the government also has a different picture. So how do you interconnect both of them? Thank you.
So as the inspection panel, our mandate is limited to looking into whether the World Bank itself has followed all of its environmental and social policies and procedures. So the World Bank gives money to a government under the obligation that these policies need to be complied with, but so the government is implementing the project, but the World Bank needs to follow up, supervise the project, clear certain documents, and make sure that the project is being implemented in line with the social and environmental policies. But we as the inspection panel, we look at whether the World Bank has done its job in that, whether the World Bank has tried to ensure that the money it lent for a project is being used in accordance with all these social and environmental policies. So when we do these investigations, our main focus is on the World Bank. So we will talk to World Bank staff that were involved in the projects in different capacities and at different stages. We also do talk to the government and different actors to get a full picture, but the focus of the investigation is really on the World Bank. But we do talk to all different stakeholders just to get a full of a picture and as much information as we can. But in our report, when we write our compliance findings, what went wrong, what didn't wrong, our focus is on the World Bank. And in terms of protecting our sources, so in our investigation reports, we never refer to names of people. We talk about the World Bank as an institution. We will say in our investigation reports, the World Bank failed to ensure that the resettlement is adequately planned because this and this and this and this was not done. So this is the type of language that we use in our investigation reports. And when it comes to the complainants, I mentioned it briefly in the presentation, is that we can ensure confidentiality. So we will not tell anybody outside the inspection panel team. We're a very small team. We're about 10 people in the office. And if somebody asks for confidentiality, we don't share the names with anyone, not with the World Bank outside only. So only the inspection panel will know who the complainants are. And neither the government nor the World Bank team will know who complained about the project. But of course, there are always risks when we go to a country and we meet with different people, and we try to be, you know, as cautious as we can, but also transparent and open in discussing early on in the process what we can do to protect people and what we cannot do. So we try to have an open and frank discussion about that in the beginning and explain what as the inspection panel we can do and what we cannot do. But having complainants' names be kept confidential and not sharing anything about their identities, and being very careful in meeting and communicating with them, whether it's through encryption, WhatsApp, whatever is the avenue that people feel safest with. And we also have people tell us where they would like to meet when we go into country. Are they comfortable to meet in one location or not? So we try to, you know, have a very open process. And throughout our entire investigation process, we are always in touch with our complainants, and we also ask them to inform us if anything happens that they are concerned about. So we have very open communication channels through our process. I hope that answers your question.
Birgit, thank you for that, because I think that's a really important element and something that would either deter or make communities very hesitant about coming forward if there was a possibility that the confidentiality would be taken less than seriously. And I think you've really outlined how seriously the IP takes that. We have a final comment from Annette, and we've got just a couple minutes to close and wrap up and take any final questions. But Annette was raising a great point about the role of local communities, of local organizations who can connect with communities and kind of bridge the gap, because so often, and we see this in other sectors as well, we run into these simple communication issues where either a community doesn't have access to Wi-Fi or internet, or literacy levels are at a place where it's very hard actually to do something like make a complaint, a formal complaint that has to be taken seriously and be detailed enough to warrant an inspection like this. And I think we are, as a movement and as a network, we're also thinking about how we have resources and what resources we have to be bridging that gap and making these connections more possible. So with that, it's a perfect segue into the final poll that we had for this segment. And we can take other questions as we're launching the poll and getting responses. But we would really like to get input from our members about what kinds of forums or how we would like to move forward with talking more about accountability, involving local NGOs and local CSOs who have the trust of communities who may be facing these problems, and what kinds of formats our members would like that to take. So feel free to put your responses in the polls. And if we have time for one final question for Birgit before we move to regional updates from our chapters. Okay, I'm not seeing questions coming in. Okay, well, thank you so much, Birgit, for making yourself available today and for giving us a lot to think about and a lot to talk about.
Thank you very much for having me, Melinda and John.
Yeah. I think we'll move to chapter updates, if John.
Yes, great, thank you. So as I was mentioning, we had a great call with the World Bank yesterday because we want to really support chapters in taking this on, and we made a new little grid of all the participation that's going on yeah, here it is. And so we have chapters that are formally launched that are bolded here, you see, and then we have countries where we have participation or people participating with us or participating in the South Asia Login Asia Network. For instance, there was just a whole presentation on community-led COVID-19 response by Bangladesh in a big conference call on the Login Asia Network recently. But just going around the world and hearing from people who are working in each region. Deanna, do you want to give us an update on Mexico?
Yeah, thank you, John, and thank you for this really interesting call. From Mexico, what we have this past month, it was a series of conversations around the municipality and what are the. We went through 7 sessions discussing different aspects of what we need to address and what we need to change, what we need to to identify into the municipalities for really having an advocacy platform of how to build these relations with local governments, and we also have different stakeholders into those conversations. So we're trying to get together a really neat agenda on advocacy, and of course the common idea around this is that we need to do it with a CLD perspective. And it was really interesting to have this because we have the participation of a lot of local governments, and now we're trying to increase those relations, those interchanges with them for building a platform, a common front, since we're going to have elections next year in Mexico, and it's going to be a really big thing, a really big moment for changing, for shifting the power.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Anne, I'm not sure who's on and not on. Can I hand this to you and you can coordinate regional updates?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I believe Pascal is here. Pascal, are you still on? Can you give an update?
Yes, he is on. You'll have to unmute Pascal.
Yeah, sure, John. Hi. Thanks, Anne. Thanks, John. Yesterday, John mentioned this. We had a call with World Bank where I have the opportunity to share an initiative underway here that have to do with social accountability as well. And the initiative is underway with the Ministry of with the involvement of the government through the Ministry of Decentralization and Local Governance, and many stakeholders are involved as well, particularly a project from the GIZ, Swiss Cooperation, and others. And the project is really, that initiative has been designed by our learning and co-creation group about decentralization, governance, and leadership. The purpose is first to work about documentation and packaging the documentation available, and also the process, tools, and practices to be made available in a way that they could support the awareness of the local government official and communities about good practices of governance and social accountability. But the second part also of the initiative is training of the commune official and the communities on the available material that will be made available. Oops, sorry. Could you hear?
Yes, we can.
Okay. And the last part has to do already with social accountability to build a follow-up mechanism and process, and we'll get inspiration from all process available, what has been shared yesterday, what has been shared today, and what has been implemented at the national level as well, to build that process through the communal governance by leading contracts, and to make sure that social accountability is really implemented. But the way here is to distinguish between what is accomplished regarding tangible achievements and what will be achieved also regarding intangible achievements. That has to do with leadership, the voice and agency for women, in brief, the MCLD goals. That's what I have to share briefly. This could be shared also with, with partners in other countries here in West Africa.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Right. And Anne, I don't see Roland's here, but I do see Arthur.
Yeah.
Arthur, do you want to give us an update from Malawi?
Please, John.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Pascal,
if we can have just 1 or 2 minutes, I would like Dr. Rebecca to talk just briefly about the meeting they had yesterday with Oxfam. If we can do that, or 1 or 2
we can do
minutes.
that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, she shared it with
John.
us before we started the call, but Rebecca, why don't you give us a quick summary?
Okay,
Okay.
so the quick summary of the meeting we had yesterday with Constant. He was really very highly engaged, careful listener, and he discussed about his organization, Oxfam, and how they are impacting lives, working with a lot of non-profits there. And also, Anne presented about how the global community-led will not control each chapter. So he was really surprised about that. And he really appreciate. And what he asked me to do, or they asked me to do, is what are the chapters? So I technically point out each chapter, each of the 30 chapter, what they are doing and where they are, and they are in both North and East, South Nigeria. So, and everything that we are doing corresponded with what they are doing there. And because the chapter, how I describe is he appreciated how they have diverse mission issues and disability, environment, they address youth, justice, and all this. And so when he compared with what he is doing, he said that we can work together, and he even invite us to go to their meeting in September. And also there is a project that is about 25 to 100 euro, so we can apply. And so I also explained to him that I would like the chapter to go to him and visit him in his office and all this. So he said, no problem. And I really appreciate how Hunger Project and how this MCLD is doing globally. And this partnership is great. I think this year, for me, is a great 60 years birthday for me to establish this chapter in Nigeria. And I'm very grateful for all of you. Thank you all.
Oh, wonderful, Doctor. That's great. That's great. So going, Arthur, and then do you have an update to give, or Daisy also? I see you're on, but I haven't heard from you yet. Is there anyone else, Anne, who we should call on?
Well, I'm not sure if Daisy can speak. She's joining from her iPhone, but Marion is also here as well. So Marion or Daisy can speak for Uganda. Arthur can speak for Malawi. I can give a quick update from Zambia. And also we have Jude from Liberia, which I can give a quick update on too, depending on our time. So
we don't have any time, so.
All right, well, let me say Liberia, the chapter there continues to form. We have 10 members. We have several people on the call from Liberia, so welcome Liberia. And we are in the process of working through chapter formation steps and experimenting with human-centered design for community-led development. So And then Zambia is also very well engaged with the national COVID response. We can talk more about that on the next call. And Marion, would you give a quick update from Uganda?
Yes, thank you very much, Anne. In the past recent, we have had an interesting dynamic in Uganda. We have the election process taking place the next year. So political campaigns have begun. But one of the biggest challenges we have is for the communities to observe the SOPs, the standard operational procedures for COVID-19. So on Monday, we had an escalating number of COVID-19 cases, which were about 318. So as we talk, there's been a warning for a lockdown for Uganda, an impending lockdown anytime again for 14 days, especially for Kampala. Then we also had a training for our members, the Movement for Community-Led Development Uganda chapter members, on a vision commitment and action tool, a highly prized CLD tool by the Hunger Project globally. And one of the areas we discovered was the question on gender. And we agreed that there is need for an impact assessment of COVID-19 on women, especially beyond just reporting the SGBV cases, and to looking at the impact of COVID-19 on women economically, but also at assessing the social impact. That's what we agreed. That's the update. Probably we also attracted 3 new members on our chapter. We attracted an agency which is very strong in WASH, that is Community Integrated Development Initiative, Wilmot, and Food Rights Alliance. They joined our movement. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, wonderful. And Arthur, anything from Malawi? You're muted.
Yep, just real briefly, I'm working with Gertrude and myself currently in Malawi, Gertrude from the Hunger Project, trying to continue to coordinate the panel discussion. It's been a while, it's kind of dragged a little bit, but we are close to getting a panel discussion date done. Working with government, we just needed approval from the Office of President and Cabinet to allow us to incorporate or include somebody who is from the National Task Force. So still some work being done there. And one of the things that I wanted to share on the group is that Malawi government has requested that schools be open with guidelines, and this is going to be happening in September. So we're hoping to get the panel discussion done before then, so that we can see how different NGOs, especially that are in the educational sector, to help with communities in preparation for with the COVID pandemic. So that's the update I have so far. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. And I hope everybody can keep safe as kids go marching into schools.
Yes.
Yes. So speaking of panels, we won't have a lot of time for me to mention it, so I'll just mention it now. We are developing, and you'll get more information soon in your email, an event during the UN General Assembly on the 16th at our regular mid-month call time. So and we're working to get some high government officials as part of that to say wonderful things about community-led development. So with that, I'd like to actually turn to my colleague, Sai. Sai, if you could unmute and give us a report on the work of the emerging humanitarian development nexus working group.
Okay, thank you, John. So first of all, for those who are not yet familiar with the Humanitarian Development Nexus Working Group, it's a part of the larger Movement for Community-Led Development, and its objective is to make a distinct contribution to shifting the power to the local actors in the area of humanitarian response. And what's unique about this HDN working group is that we wanted to inject community-led development not only during the humanitarian crisis, but before, during, and after the crisis. So it's more of a more sustainable approach. How do we interject community-led development in Nexus programming. And so HDN working group is quite new, and we've done some exploratory meetings with some of the INGOs. Some of them are Alliance for Peace Building, Search for Common Ground, Relief International. And right now, where we are at is that we are not clear how do we make that distinct contribution. Because from the exploratory meetings that we did, we've garnered that there are already a lot of existing working groups, and there has been no coordination. There has been some overlapping of programs and activities. And so what we'd like to do to move forward this HDN working group is to do a mapping exercise of what's already out there. So we'll be distributing a survey form, but this will be only for those who are interested to join the Humanitarian Development Nexus working group. So if you're interested, we will email to you the survey form for you to fill out. And this survey form actually its purpose is for us to know what working group are you working with, what is its mandate, what programs and activities have you been doing, and what challenges have you been experiencing, and what do you think could be the added value of the HDN working group to what's already existing. So if you're interested to join the HDN working group, I'm not really sure what's the best way, but I think you can type in your email address at the chat box, or John, you may have some other ways how they can join the HDN working group.
John, you're muted.
Okay, great. Now I'm not muted. So you can go to our newly reorganized website, since we're now, interacting with these big professional international groups like the World Bank. We've reorganized our website to make things easier to find. But if you go here, you can subscribe you can convince every policymaker you know to subscribe to our general newsletter. But then there are links here for every one of our working groups and country chapters. So you can just go here and you can click Humanitarian Development Nexus working group, and it will generate an invitation to email for you to join that working group. So that will get you in. I also want to plug for all the countries to please make sure that we have the things that you want on your country page for your chapter, so that that each country chapter is well represented, particularly when the Ministry of Decentralization or the UN or UN Women wants to learn about what you're doing, that they see the things there that you want them to see. So thank you, Sai. Was there anything else you wanted to say?
I think that's pretty much it. So please subscribe to the mcld.org. That will be, well, the easiest way actually is mcld.org/subscribe. So, and then you can scroll down and click the Humanitarian Development Nexus link. And from there, we'll give you an invitation.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. So our next global call will be on the same time, the 30th of September, the last Wednesday in September. And then we'll hopefully also see all of you on the 16th during our UN General Assembly event. The working groups and chapters will keep working, and we will continue our work to shift the power to restore women and men and youth to control over their own lives and destiny. So thank you all for joining today. The recording and the slides will go up on our website as soon as we can get them. So thank you all, and goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Goodbye.
Nice to see you.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Goodbye. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks. Jude. Thanks, Todd.
Thank you, John. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank
Anne.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. John.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody, and the presenters.
Fine. We are all right. We are all right.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Bye from Nairobi.
Bye, Juliana.
Thank you.
Bye.
Let me see where I'm going to run with you.
Bye.
Bye.